Those silly dogs. They always think I'm asking them to come out when I tell James that dinner's ready. I get so excited. Oh, I should show you what we're eating. I'll just bring my food over there. There, that's what we're eating. So, it's, you know that Indian rice dish that I was gonna make? Well, I've made it with quinoa instead, and honestly, it's not that good. I haven't used these flavors together before, and I don't think I will again. It's okay. Anyway, I'm eating lentils with panchvaran, and this sprouted lentils. I love it. It's so simple. But anyway, for James's dish, I put a bunch of cashews and macadamia nuts on it. I have the kimchi. He has sauerkraut. I love the kimchi. I'm drinking some green tea. I made it with matcha powder, but I didn't put that much in it. And it's the bulk barn stuff, so it's not that good. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about The Anxiety Cure by Klaus Bernhardt, and this came to us from the Kanai, I don't know how to pronounce it, Kainai Public Library. James would probably know where that is. I don't know. It's got to be around here somewhere. So, just the inside page right there, there's a little bit. In the UK, more than 11 million people have been diagnosed with anxiety disorders. 2 million suffer from constantly recurring panic attacks. Klaus Bernhardt rejects tranquilizers and antidepressants. I'm going to see if I can prop that up. Look at that. Now I can hold my tea to make my hands warm. He rejects tranquilizers and antidepressants in almost all cases. 70% of his patients need fewer than 6 sessions to be completely cured of their panic attacks. Page 1. Symptoms: for no apparent reason, dizziness, numbness, shortness of breath, nausea, heart racing. 2. Ignoring warning signs is what usually triggers initial occurrence of panic attacks. Ignoring gut instinct. Mental warning signs: sudden forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, lack of motivation, exhaustion, feeling sad for no apparent reason. Physical warning signs: stomach and digestive problems, sudden problems with vision, rashes and other skin disorders, involuntary muscle twitching, increased urinary frequency. 4. Antipsychotics, thyroid hormone, thyroxine can cause panic attacks. Switching to natural thyroid hormone supplements taken from pigs helps. Panic attacks are most frequently triggered by recreational drugs. THC can trigger anxiety. MDMA, ecstasy, cocaine, psilocybin can cause panic. 5. Damage that might be inflicted. Formation of neuronal connections that trigger panic attacks. If it happens once, the chance of recurring increases massively each time drug is taken. If you get a panic attack within 40 hours of taking the drugs the first time, stop taking it. B12 deficiency or food intolerance can cause panic. 6. Take B12 supplements. Foods that can cause bloating or gluten intolerance can lead to panic attacks. 7. Ludwig von Rohmheld found that those who suffered from bloating also had symptoms common to anxiety patients: hot flushes, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, anxiety, dizziness, disturbed sleep, and irregular heartbeat. Extrasystole. air in gastrointestinal tract pushes the diaphragm up and can place pressure on the heart. Totally gonna drop this away. Now, pressure can cause pain resembling angina. Therefore, if you're suffering from Romhead syndrome, burp and fart, or modify your diet. Avoid anything that makes you gassy for 2 weeks. If you notice less anxiety, you have Romhead syndrome. And page 8. Number 1, avoid gluten, wheat, rye, spelt, oats, or barley. Blood tests only show whether you produce antibodies against gluten, don't show how your body and brain reacts against gluten. Therefore, tests might not diagnose intolerance. 9. Keep track of how quickly you feel tired after eating and whether concentration suffers. Are you more productive on days when you avoid gluten? 2. Eat food with the highest water content first. Take a small break between each course. He thinks you should eat fruit as an appetizer, not a dessert. Then eat protein-fat foods. This will decrease bloating. He likes a piece of honeydew wrapped in Parma ham, but for most, this combo causes bloating. The melon eaten alone takes 30 minutes to pass through stomach and intestines. When eaten with ham, the melon starts to ferment in the stomach. Gas is produced. Push diaphragm upwards. This can cause Romhead syndrome. 10. Number 3. Supplement your diet with caraway and ginger. Fennel can also help. Take before eating. 4. Go for a walk to strengthen the musculature of the diaphragm. Avoid really gassy foods such as beans, leeks, and some sweeteners. Well, there's lots of ginger in this kimchi. Within weeks of a first panic attack, fear turns into a completely automated pattern of thought that deeply roots itself in the synaptic connections of the brain. Our brain always wants something to do, so when searching, it's easier for your brain to use the established networks of negative thinking and anxiety than to relax. We rewire our brains by thinking a certain way. 15. We need to start building the right neuronal pathways in your brain. 16. Exposure therapy and psychoanalysis reinforce what urgently needs to be removed. Antidepressants and tranquilizers are incapable of effecting real structural change in the brain. 17. A successful therapeutic method must ensure that synapses that ingrain a positive mental attitude are formed in the brain. The brain will network from there. 20 to 21. Psychodynamic phenomenon is called secondary gain. Illness serves to avoid something else, something unpleasant. Panic attacks can be a way of avoiding long overdue change. 24. Tingling arms, legs, numbness, racing heart, stomach cramps, tightness in chest and throat, dizziness, depersonalization, the feeling of being a detached observer of oneself. And it's funny, I was just recommending that to somebody, a friend of mine who was having stress, and I'm like, just pretend your life is like a movie and you're maybe a director, and you feel a lot better about the whole thing. Anyway, so I do that. Your psyche is trying to warn you that you need to alter certain behavior patterns of thinking to avoid more serious damage in the long run. 25. Adult brain contains 86 billion nerve cells, neurons. These are connected to each other by 100 trillion synapses. Each individual brain is connected to 1,000 other brain cells. Our conscious mind can perceive a maximum of 8 pieces of information per second and takes 3 seconds to produce a fully formed thought. Our unconscious processes at least 80,000 pieces of information. They process 80,000 pieces of information per second, making it 10,000 times faster, cleverer than the conscious mind. 27. Our unconscious mind chooses our mate, determines whether we will produce healthy offspring together by smell alone. Listen to your gut. 30. With every anxious thought, your brain stimulates the release of adrenaline from the adrenal glands. This neurotransmitter increases heart rate, which increases oxygen and nutrient flow to the body. For people with an anxiety disorder, this surplus of O2 and nutrients is not used for fight or flight. Sufferers are often frozen by fear. Some have difficulty leaving the house. Micro movements, tingling in arms, legs, and sudden shiver drive the body temperature to burn off excess energy in cells. If a panic attack makes you feel cold, you may be hyperventilating. The pH increase of your blood supply to the hands, feet, brain rapidly worsens, leads to dizziness, damp and tingling skin, muscle cramps. 31. Some even faint, but usually only for a few seconds. 33. Most stomach ulcers, slip disc, chronic diarrhea, shingles, and other skin irritations can be traced back to this. 79. Fear of fear is one of the main triggers. Face fear? 80. 2 tiers where change can be affected. 1. Changing your circumstances. 2. Direct interaction with the anxiety itself. Chain reaction of anxiety is like row of dominoes. Removing a domino is called pattern breaking. You must recognize the dominoes to know which one will be easiest to remove. 81. In strongly visually oriented people, anxiety is often triggered by a quickly moving scene in their mind's eye. Some might picture themselves falling over or trapped in a situation they can't escape from. Others see themselves having an accident while driving. Mine's cutting the ends of my fingers off. But I don't actually see myself cutting my ends of my fingers off. I just see my ends of my fingers suddenly cut off. I don't know how, but it's quite unnerving. Visually triggered anxiety only works when the image moves quickly. 1. Take 3 minutes to list everything about your life that no longer brings you joy. 2. Take 3 minutes describing how your life will be once it's amazing. Use only positive formulations. Most anxiety patients find the first part easy and the second part hard. Anxiety wires for negative. 10 sentences method for second part and spend 20 minutes per day on it. No negatives. Don't use hidden negatives like carefree or debt-free. 90. Mental training in sports can speed up training success by up to 40% compared to purely physical training. Formulate your sentences exclusively in the present tense, nor must your sentences focus exclusively on your physical or mental well-being. Phrase your sentences in concrete terms. I treat myself like my best friend. I speak to myself with respect, eat well, surround myself with only people who do me good, blah, blah, blah. 96. Mention a concrete situation within the sentence that you consider part of a perfect relationship. 98% of anxiety is produced in the first 3 sensory channels, seeing, hearing, feeling. Then there's smelling and tasting. Taste and smell allergy free from ingrained anxiety structures. 98. Use the 5 senses technique on your 10 sentences. First see yourself like whatever, painting a picture or whatever, and then go through the senses that way, but you have to be really detailed about it. The more details, the better. So 99, you already have complete mastery of a life ruled by anxiety, which is precisely what we want to avoid reinforcing. I like that quote. If you really enjoy drinking coffee, but are avoiding it because of your anxiety issues, then now is the perfect time to, at least mentally, start drinking it again. So while you're, say, painting your picture, you might have a cup of coffee in your hand, even though you know you shouldn't be having it in your actual life. The more details that occur as you run the situations through your head, the faster you'll be able to lead a happy and carefree life again. This technique rewires your brain at a speed that outdoes conventional thinking by a factor of 10,000. The sentence only generates a handful of synapses in your brain, keeping the 5 sensory channels separate. And anyway, as soon as you switch from one sense to another, these regions have to start sharing data with each other, since you now not only want to see something, but all the rest. So this forces your neurons to fire together repeatedly, which leads to them forming synaptic connections with each other. If you find 20 details for seeing, 20 for hearing, feeling, 10 for smell, 5 for taste, that's 20 times 20 times 20 times 10 times 5 synaptic connections. If you perform this exercise conscientiously, you can generate up to 400,000 synapses in your brain within 20 minutes, all positive thoughts. And this should decrease the frequency and intensity of panic attacks by 60 to 70% within the first week. If you practice this just before going to bed, the success rate's higher. 4 to 6 times a night, you switch between deep sleep and dream sleep. In REM, our brain learns, processes events experienced during the day, and it prefers to process the experiences just before falling asleep. So if you're putting that positive, image, anyway, whatever. The 400,000 positive neuronal connections become 1.2 million just like that. 104. 8 out of 10 patients report dreams strongly affected from third night on. 2 out of 10 patients report feeling gentle pressure in their head for a few days, but it's harmless and passes. After a week, you'll feel noticeably happier. After 3 weeks, your brain recognizes the repeating pattern and starts to deposit certain pieces of information in the cerebellum rather than the cerebrum. Automated processes are stored in the cerebellum, and from now on, you're automating calm and happiness, where once panic and anxiety held sway. After 6 months of mental training, around 70% of the patients are more or less free of anxiety. There's a relapse rate of 5%. 106. Continue the 10-sentence exercises for 5 minutes each evening. Most important, as you taper off meds, replace a sentence every so often. Each evening, use a different one of the 10 sentences. So then I wrote down a summary, but 110. Stop wallowing in the past. Instead of trying to dig up some event that supposedly triggered your anxiety, you're better off concentrating on all the techniques which will rid you of anxiety and panic. 111 to 112. Linus Pauling quote, "Science is error brought up to the latest standard." 118. Use stop techniques to stop anxiety symptoms within seconds when they occur. Less than 1% of anxiety and panic attacks are smell-taste related. In these cases, the original trigger was usually a traumatic experience in the form of a bad accident, violent crime, etc. In these cases, you may need to remove the memories with assistance of medical hypnosis. 120. As something starts spinning in your head, pay attention to how your mental merry-go-round is turning and simply pretend it's moving in the other direction. Focus to see it grinding to a halt. Feel yourself calm as it moves in the opposite direction. 122. 2 anxiety triggers. 2 triggers for positive feeling. Once you can stop anxiety on all 3 channels, you can overcome your anxiety disorder. Write down 2 sentences that run through your head, most frequently right before panic attack. Example, don't panic, not now, it'll be a disaster. Or, I can't get out of here, I think I'm going to go crazy. Something like that. And then write down a couple where somebody told you something that made you really happy. So for me, my dad told me I would have made a great farmer. Well, that was a really happy memory for me. So I have that. So that's a good auditory one. Write auditory at the top of the page, set it aside. New piece of paper. 2 instances of strong panic or anxiety. Where, when, who with, real or imagined scene. Now write another negative situation where you don't have a panic attack. Positive images. Exam passed well. Fantastic holiday, etc. Write visual at the top of the page, set it aside. Write a new piece of paper. Unpleasant feelings as anxiety wells up inside. Leave 2 lines between each feeling. Don't use racing heartbeat, even if it's the most typical symptom. Write down dizzy tight chest, lump in throat, tingling arms, legs, numbness, and details. 126. Pick up auditory page. Most patients irritated by this. Read sentences in your head. Most have a tendency to hear anxiety sentences on one side. 127. Most patients, 91%, realize the perception side of the positive sentences was on the opposite side of head. 51% hear bad thoughts more on the left side and good thoughts more on the right. It's opposite 42% of the time. But the thing is that the key is that the good thoughts tend to be on one side of the head, bad thoughts tend to be on the other.
It's like that movie thing where you got an angel and
I know. It's crazy.
You think of the same thing?
Yeah, well, anybody would be, I think. So, 129. For 7% of patients, everything feels in the middle. This happens with people whose anxiety has already expanded into depression. These people suffer sleep disturbances as well as so-called morning blues. Mood is worse in the morning than the evening. 132. Try to slide a bad image to the other half of your brain. The image gets stuck in the middle for most. Visually gifted can slide it over quickly. Negative scene transforms so you can perceive it on the good side. You might have to picture a television on a cart. TV's turned off. Practice sliding it back and forth. And then turn the TV on with negative scene playing. Push it back and forth. And with this, it's interesting because some people, once they switch it over to the other side, screen goes black. They can't turn it into a positive image. But he'll talk about that later. 134. The sliding from bad to good side is a pattern breaker that directly affects the release of adrenaline and histamine. Your brain has spent years training these 2 neurotransmitters to release with your trigger. The mere sliding interrupts the trigger. This stops the brain from releasing histamine and adrenaline and negative body symptoms. 135. Zoom technique. Sometimes the sliding doesn't work, right? So then these people, what they do is they zoom out. So you're all of a sudden you have your problem and you focus really well on it, zoom it so it's just a tiny little dot, and then when it comes back, picture it as your positive image, right? And so then just keep doing that, zooming back and forth. And what they found, those people, is that when the image zooms, like when they're picturing the bad thing again, it's less and less clear as they're zooming it back and forth. So whatever works. And then there's the slow motion technique, and that doesn't, like, that was when he's talking about slow motion, I don't want to see my fingers cut off in slow motion. It would not work for me anyway, because like I said, I don't see myself cutting my fingers off. They're just all of a sudden off. I look down and it's like, oh, fingers gone. So this is like a flash. It's just an instant. I can't slow that down. But anyway, for some people, like one woman, she throws herself in front of a train in her head. Well, so he said, well, slow it down. So first you're hit by the train, you're flying through the air, and take like 5 minutes flying through the air. And then you're seeing the train coming at you, but it's moving really slowly, and you can see slow motion, train conductor's face and whatever. And it's just, by the time it's hitting you, it's really, I guess it's not a big deal. So 142, stop techniques for anxiety triggered by inner dialogues. Auditory slide, pitching technique. So the pitching technique is, okay, now I have this, and a lot of people do. When you're telling yourself, you're like, whatever it is, the negative thing that's going around and around and around. Like when you're stressed, it's just wrapping, and it's really distracting. You can't think of anything else. It's just wrapping around. But the problem is, it's your own voice. And you trust your own voice. You trust yourself, because why would you lie to yourself, right? So it's your own voice that's taking you around the circle. So he's saying, change the pitch. If you lower that pitch of the voice, so it sounds like this all of a sudden, you're not going to trust it. It's not your own voice. So you're not going to listen to it then.
Make it sound like Donald Trump and work like a child.
Whatever. And that actually sounds pretty reasonable to me. So, or you could speed it up so it sounds like Tinkerbell. Whatever. 151. Counter impulse for anxiety caused by physical sensations. I don't know. I made it. Cancel left-right dizziness. Imagine back and forth dizziness. Which this stuff, I don't know how this could work, because I don't want to be dizzy one way or the other. Counterclockwise, countered by clockwise spinning. Tight throat. You picture a cool pipe that expands in your throat and breaks the tight collar, and it falls off, and then you're able to breathe. And tight chest, mechanical ribs of steel to expand and at the press of a button, and then you could breathe again. It's just, so I picture like Iron Man, right? You press the Iron Man glowy thing in the middle, and then you're Iron Man all of a sudden. I don't know. So 158, pencil held horizontally in mouth with the back of the teeth as much as you can, and that makes a positive expression in the mirror, right? And so that you're training your brain to think that you're smiling-ish. So you do that, you stick the pencil in your mouth for
just don't
5
swallow.
minutes. So you're thinking about, say you're really stressed out, and you're thinking about taking, what was that drug that the bad doctors gave you for a while, because they were thinking when you had cancer and you were having the back spasms, they gave you some drug because they were thinking you're Ativan. So anyway, they were not right. He had cancer. So anyway, he was not having a panic attack.
They were thinking I was imagining things.
Yeah. So anyway.
Stupid.
So you're thinking.
Sphincters, they'll say.
So, say you are having a really intense stress reaction, and you're thinking about taking an Ativan. He says, put the pencil in your mouth for 5 minutes. Don't take anything yet, just put it in your mouth. You'll probably feel better just having, seriously, a pencil across your mouth. What is it going to harm you to try? Just try it. So anyway, I enjoyed reading that book this week.
Oh.